Hi everyone, I'm Jonathan Baumgart, the CEO of Atomic Consulting. Today we're going to discuss obtaining a Forex broker license in Cyprus. Okay, so I wanted to provide you some details about an FX broker license in Cyprus, what it's all about. A good starting point is to discuss the regulators. The regulatory body that oversees and administers FX trading in Cyprus is the Cyprus Securities and Exchange Commission, although it's often abbreviated as CySEC or CySEC, just a easier way to pronounce it instead of going over the entire full name. They are one of the most well-known regulators, with the exception of the UK. Now, because of Brexit, we're just going to talk about Europe. So for all of Europe, Cyprus is by far the de facto destination for FX broker licensing. Now, many people ask, why Cyprus? Why did Cyprus become so popular? Well, as FX trading really took off, and this was, let's say, in the late aughts, so 2007 to 2009 and 10, when really it was growing and many brokers really started to enter the marketplace. Cyprus just happened to be a region where a broker could very quickly obtain a license, and it just created a positive reinforcement effect. I mean, in theory, you can apply to any European Union member state for a broker license. The problem is each one of these countries has their own rules, and for most of them, they simply have not granted enough of these licenses for it to be a very, fast procedure. And that's why brokers just default to Cyprus, because it's the quickest way to get a license. I mean, you probably have never heard of a Forex broker regulated in Romania or Belgium or the Netherlands. Perhaps there is, but it's very rare. And usually it's a local broker that grew and grew and grew, started locally, and then got to the point where they became regulated. But for the most part, Cyprus is the main area. That's where almost all of the European brokers at least have some type of presence. The other reason is that the EU broker license allows for passporting. So what that means is if you hold the license in Cyprus, you're able to legally offer Forex and CFD trading to all EU member states. And you don't need to have a physical presence, meaning if you have a license in Cyprus, traders in Ireland, in Spain, in France, all across the EU are able to open an account and trade. Now, there are some regional exceptions. Actually, bringing up France, I think there are some specific requirements, and that's something that brokers need to remember. But in general, having this license in Cyprus allows you to basically target the entire European Union. Now, that said, if you do want to promote a regional office, you do need permission in that country. But in general, from Cyprus, you can passport out the license. And that's the attractiveness of this license and the region. So now I want to talk about the main two types of licenses. The first is known as an STP license, also referred to as an A-book license. The capital here is 125,000 euros, and this license means that the broker can only just forward on the trades from their clients onto a liquidity provider. And the rules that are set in place in Cyprus state that the liquidity provider has to be within the European Union. If it's an offshore liquidity provider, the broker would then need to put up enough capital to cover negative balances. And that's an important distinction to make. So you can only realistically operate at 125,000 euros if you're working with a liquidity provider that's in the EU and licensed there. The second license is the 730,000 license. That's the capital that's needed, and it's a market maker license. This means you can do both. You can have STP or you can make the market. But note the high difference in capital. That's because market making is a much more risky enterprise for a broker. It involves skill and finesse to properly manage risk. It's not as easy as one would imagine, so more capital is needed for Cyprus to allow this. And those are the two main options. If you're interested in applying for this license, please contact our team and we can help you weigh the pros and cons. I want to talk now about requirements. So to get a license in Cyprus, it should be obvious, but you need to have an office there, on the island. That should be clear, but what you may not know is you also need to make sure that office has a fully staffed, basically team that can operate the different functions of the broker. At a minimum, you're going to need to have executive directors. These are those who have positions usually with a C in their name, like a CEO, a COO, CTO. Those are considered executives, as well as some non-executive roles that are pretty high up positions, like a head of dealing, a head of technology, perhaps a head of compliance. I think you get the idea. You can't get by in Cyprus by having your office and all your teams somewhere else. It's okay if you have offices in other parts of the world, but you must meet these minimum requirements. It's also important to note that Cyprus has what's called the Investor Compensation Scheme, which is some insurance that is needed to be paid in order to be approved. It's going to depend on the broker, so if you wanted to have an idea on the specifics, it's best to contact us. That's another aspect of the license you should be aware of. Additionally, you will need accounting and ongoing, regulatory reporting. In the EU, it's one of the more highly regulated regions, so that means a lot more reporting. Now, on to leverage. After ESMA, which was a change that happened a couple of years ago, the leverage in Europe got reduced. So now if you want to offer FX trading in Europe, the leverage is set at 30-1, and for CFDs and other products, it's a little bit less at 20-1. So this is something to keep in mind. If you do get this license, you can't offer the leverage that used to be popular throughout Europe. Additionally, deposit bonuses are not allowed in Cyprus or in the EU as a whole, and binary options was eliminated as a trading product as well. So, regulations have gotten more strict in Cyprus, and these are now the rules that you should be accustomed with if you want to get a license here. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is what's called the fast track. So this is unique to Cyprus. They have what's called a fast track examination scheme, and I'll link to an article on this so you can learn a little bit more. But basically, if you're in a hurry and want to get this application pushed through more quickly, there's actually a special procedure you can follow. It does involve an additional cost, specifically 25,000 euros. And what will happen is if you pay this fee, then you can have your application more quickly reviewed. The reason this exists is that, as I mentioned, Cyprus is the de facto region for FX broker licensing. For that reason, CySEC, the regulator, gets a lot of applications. So if you wanted to speed up the process, they have a feature which you're able to take advantage of. So, if you wanted to learn more about that, let us know. Basically, that's a very quick rundown on Cyprus. Obviously, there's much more to discuss if your broker or your firm would like to be licensed in Cyprus. So if you wanted to have a more in-depth discussion about this, then you definitely want to get in touch with our team so that one of our consultants can reach out to you to discuss Cyprus in more detail. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, then you definitely want to subscribe. Check out this nice subscription plaque I have. You want to subscribe to our channel. We post videos about every week or so on the different subjects and topics happening in the FX market. And I'll also mention that if you have a specific question, make sure to write the comment or to email us, and we'll try to produce a video about it. So thank you very much for checking out this video, and have a great day.